Hey everybody, welcome to today's show. I'm super excited about this new series I'm starting all on the US dollar, the growing debt, the rise of cryptocurrency, the International Monetary Fund, and ultimately what's coming next and what you and I should be thinking about and preparing for. So this whole topic started for me probably 3 or 4 years ago when I was just praying and God kind of, I don't know if you're like me, but God kind of shows me different things. And I just kind of started to get an interest in them. And so God started talking to me about cryptocurrency. And it really resonated with me. And so cryptocurrency is like a digital store of value. And so it's all over the news right now. A lot of people just think Bitcoin and its rise recently. It's gone from 4, 5, 10, 15,000, 20,000, 25,000 as of the time of right now. It's sitting around 60,000, 62,000 all-time high. And so a lot of people kind of looking at this may not even know what the heck is going on. And so what is it? And can I make money with this? Is this dangerous? What is it? And so years ago, God started talking to me about, I really believe what's coming. And ultimately kind of like the financial revolution of the future. And so I got a series of videos I want to do. And when I started a few years ago, I was really like retargeted online. I'm watching ads and stuff. And I was retargeted by this guy, James Alucher. And so he was talking all about Bitcoin and how it's the future. I mean, like just like a secular money economist, futurist guy. And I was like, well, that's kind of interesting. And so I started watching it. But when God was kind of talking to me about it, I kept reframing it in terms of what the Bible says about finance, and especially in the end times, what does the Bible say about finance and our ability to buy and sell, and the idea of it being, chips implanted in us. And I don't know if you saw recently, but when John writes about that in Revelation of being able to, a mark that you take on your hand and on your forehead, sometimes I think, man, that's not very far away from when people are paying for groceries, at an Amazon store. And these days they just wave their hand. And because everyone's palm is unique, Amazon knows, oh, that's John Doe, charge it to John's account. Or when we go to the airport and they scan your eyes, if you have clear or something like that, boom, there you go. It's like you're scanned and, oh yeah, you are who you say you are. Go ahead and go through. Even at Disney World, for a long time before COVID, you'd put your thumbprint down just to get in, and they got my thumbprint. So just this digitization of so many parts of our lives, it's really natural for the next step in money to become digital. And whether we like it or not, according to scripture, that train and that time clock is inevitable. And so what I think we're seeing now is really an infrastructure being laid to fulfill on really what's coming. It could be a decade from now, 2 decades from now, 100 years from now, right? But if you're kind of looking around like I do, I'm like, ooh, might be sooner than we all think. So, but I want to talk to you about it. And what I want to start with is really the explanation of the history of money. And so when we talk about a financial revolution, what does that look like? And so I actually went back and I found these great videos. Somebody took James's videos and made these really, I find them a little hysterical, cartoon videos. So they're easy to follow and they're very short. And so I want to play for you the history of money. And what we're going to look at in this video specifically is the US dollar and the growing national debt. And what's happening is there's really a groundwork that's been laid of what I believe is coming is the collapse of the US dollar. And a lot of people think, oh, that's not going to happen, Mercedes. Oh, that's no way. There's no way the dollar is going to fail. How could it fail? Well, I got to tell you, we've not always been the dominant currency. Coming out of World War II, we were bestowed that honor. Before that, it was the British sterling pound. So all currencies rise and fall. And that's one of the things this video kind of shows you. After the video, I'm going to show you just how bad it is right now and why I believe the stage that's being set, not just nationally, this is a thing that you have to get, and a lot of you are clued into. It's not just a national Republican versus Democrat or conservative versus socialist. It's actually sovereign nation states that maintain things like a currency versus global economies and globalists. And there's a real, I believe, targeted agenda to weaken the American dollar and eventually usher in a new type of a currency or economic zones ultimately. But it's coming, and I think I know where it's going. So I'm excited to share that with you. But let's jump in. I'm gonna look down here and I'm gonna start this video and we'll watch it together. Okay, it's really short.
So first, history of money. How did money start? If I needed some food, and I was making the shoes in my little village, I could trade a pair of shoes for some rice. And this is bartering. Now, I'm oversimplifying how bartering occurred 10,000 years ago, but this is the very rough idea. But there's all sorts of problems with bartering. What if I only need some food? Do I trade half a pair of shoes? Or what if I had to move? What if my village was attacked and everyone has to move? Do I carry all my bags of rice with me? That would be too heavy. I suddenly have to start from scratch. So there was no way to store money. Let's take it even a step back further. What is money? First, money is a store of value. We use it to keep track of how much value we have or how much we are worth. So we're able to store all the value we've worked hard for in this form of this thing called money. The other thing money is good for is as a medium of exchange. Put simply, we use it to buy and sell things. So bartering quickly got replaced by coins. People started using coins made from rare metals. Because these metals are rare, they are hard to mine and therefore good to use as a store of value. And then how would you avoid problems like forgery? Well, it depends what face was carved into the coin, and you could also measure the weight of the coin. So many ounces of gold equaled a certain amount of value. So precious metals and coins became the form of money for several thousand years. But again, there still was a lot of problems with this. One is, what if one country was able to mine a lot of gold? There was a lot of gold underneath the ground, and another country, there was no gold. So then the second country would have to go to war with the first country to get some gold. So what was the result of this? Well, you had Europe sending quote unquote explorers over to North America and essentially wiping out every single kingdom in North America in order to get the gold. So what happened then? Does gold really solve all your problems? Not really, because gold was often forged. Gold was hard to store. It's like if you accumulated great wealth, what were you going to do? Store all of your gold in one massive castle if you were incredibly wealthy? Well, some people did do that. How would you pay somebody in gold? If I had to buy something in China and I'm sitting in the US, what am I going to do? Send a gold bar to China and hope that they don't open it up in the mail and steal it from me? And there's all sorts of ways in which my gold could be messed with if I'm paying with a lot of precious metals for some item. So precious metals basically didn't work. So what happened? Well, countries like the United States, as an example, but every country started to replace precious metals for their coins with paper money. So in the United States, we replaced precious coins with dollar bills. And I'm taking a look right now at the $1 bill. $1 bill almost makes it seem like this fake contract. Like we've got George Washington staring at us. And, there's all this mythology about George Washington never lying. So we've got to trust the $1 bill. Their signatures are here like it's a contract. On the back of the dollar bill, there's an eagle. And then there's "In God We Trust." So, hey, we've got to trust one or the other. But originally, you could go to the Federal Reserve in the United States and exchange this dollar bill for $1's worth of gold. But that also had a lot of problems. One problem is it's really easy to forge paper money. Another problem with money is that it used to be backed by gold. So for every dollar in circulation, there was at least $1 worth of gold stored in a safe somewhere, maybe Fort Knox, to back that dollar's value. But the problem is the United States started to spend a bunch of money on all sorts of things. One is they went to war in Vietnam for absolutely no reason at all and spent hundreds of billions, maybe, trillions of dollars in today's money on a war with no purpose at all. And they didn't have enough gold to pay for it. And then under Lyndon Johnson, he also just started all of these so-called Great Society with all these social improvement programs like, welfare and Medicare and so on. He was making commitments he simply did not have the money to pay for. So what Nixon did was solve that problem by saying, look, I guess we don't need it gold anymore for this paper money. And you're just going to have to trust that paper money is good because the United States is good and period. That's it. But is paper money really trustworthy? Now, before
Okay, so is paper money really trustworthy? Before we really get into why cryptocurrency, why so many people really flock to it over the last, probably 10 years, you have to first kind of understand the problem and the growing problem. And I think there's a lot of people who are tuned into how much money the Fed is now printing for different government program after different government program. And you can kind of hear James's opinion in there. I mean, it's kind of like, it's the, the explain it to me like I'm a dummy version, right, of what's really going on with the US dollar. And so, but I want to show you, I found some really cool websites I'd love to bring up. I want to bring on the screen and show it to you. Okay, so here we are. We start off with George Washington. You can see this is the actual, let me start all the way at the top. I didn't want to give it away, but this is the total debt that we have. And this is the change from president to president. And so you can see the total debt starts going up. We've got James Polk. We've got Abraham Lincoln, right? We fought a war, boom, goes way up. We keep going, we keep going. So, right, this is 100,000. If you can see on the screen, this is 1,000,000. And then we have 1,000,000,000 starting back here, right? And so we keep going. And then let's get to our point where we were talking about just a second ago. James was just talking about. And so here's, look at this. Here's John F. Kennedy. Then we have Richard Nixon. And now we start getting up with Reagan. We're not just in billions anymore. We're now at 1 trillion. So 2 trillion, 4 trillion with senior. We've got for Clinton 5, and then all of a sudden with George W. Bush, we go to 11 trillion, and he doubles it. And then we've got Barack Obama with 20 trillion, and Trump leaving office, we have 27 trillion. Right now we're sitting just about 28 trillion. And you can see that too. You can go to the national debt clock. It's just US debt clock. And you can see it for yourself. And so you could see the total national debt, 28 trillion. And then you could go all the way through, see our different liabilities. But ultimately, the liability per citizen is $491,000. Good luck. Good luck finding that. I don't know who has $491,000 of tax-paying citizens to pay off our national debt at this point, because we just keep printing money. It's crazy. So then you start to wonder, okay, well, when we say we're printing the money, where's all that money going? Okay, well, people buy our debt. So we print all this money, and then really it's other countries a lot of times that are buying our debt. So I want to show you that. Let's go back to our screen here. And the biggest holders of the US debt. So Japan holds a huge chunk of our debt. China, we've got Brazil, Cayman Islands, Ireland, United Kingdom, Luxembourg. So these are the people that are holding our debt that ultimately, another simple way to explain it is to think like if you are spending more money than you're taking in within your household, right? So if you and your spouse, or you've got money coming in, let's say you're making $120,000 a year combined income. Well, if you keep spending 150, you're going to be running up your credit card bills. And what the federal government has a unique ability to do is it's kind of like they keep extending their credit limit by printing more and more and more and more and more dollars, and people keep buying them, mainly because we're the world's reserve currency, which we'll talk about in another video after this. And so, but you get to a point where you're making interest payments on this debt. And then eventually you might be spending so much money, you can't even make your minimum payments anymore on your credit cards. Like if we're making this a household example, well, we're really close to that happening as a country. We have so much debt that either one or two things people can happen, that countries can decide, well, we don't want to buy your debt anymore. Or it just gets to a point where we can't even make basic payments. And I want to show you this other crazy graph. I mean, this other one, you got to see this of where our money's actually going. So there's this really cool, it's called Visual Capitalist, and I'll send you these links. You can check it out for yourself. But it says, is America's debt a cause for concern? It says the general consensus following the events of 2008 is that large financial stimulus was effective in speeding up the consequent recovery of the, of the country and the markets. And so now that we're facing a pandemic, it's likely that Americans would support the idea of running large deficits to boost the economy. Looking back at COVID-19, however, does reveal some warning signs. One frequent criticism of the ever-growing national debt is its associated interest cost, which could cannibalize investment in other areas. In fact, the effects of this dilemma are already becoming apparent over the past decade. The U.S. has spent more on interest. These are interest payments on the debt that I just showed you all these other countries own, than it's gone to programs such as veterans benefits and education. So this is rampant government spending. And I don't know if it's just my generation, having grown up with like baby boomers, and they're very like consumption oriented, and just watching, just America as a whole, just such a consumer economy and a right now economy. And we've really done away with a lot of these ideas of saving for the long term and not spending beyond what you make. And actually the idea of living below your means. Nationally, this has happened at a federal level. And so I'm looking at it, as a 30-something, and I'm looking at this going, this is my inheritance, from the 55, 60, 70-year-old generation that's really stewarded the national economy, the Federal Reserve. This is what I'm inheriting, and my children are inheriting. Of how are we ever going to be able to pay this off when it's $491,000 per citizen? And so we look at different things, right? And let's see if I can find this one other cool graphic. It had to do with, I think it's in here somewhere, with GDP. So GDP is, think of that as like money into your household. Yeah, here we go. Here it is. So let me just make it a little bit bigger on the screen in case it's hard to see. And what we've got here is America's debt to GDP. So debt is what we're spending, and GDP is kind of like what's coming into the household. And so you can see in 1994, remember this is Bush Sr., this is Clinton, and W. This whole time frame, you could see the debt to versus GDP. And so we're going to click through it. I just want you to visualize kind of where we're at. And then when we get closer to this, and so there's really only a handful of ways to fix this. It is, I believe, at its core, are conservative principles of decreased spending, right? So when we're looking at the national debt, what are we spending all that money on? And actually, before I move too far away from it, I love this visual capitalist one, because it really kind of shows you where the money's going. Like, this is one great breakdown, a closer look at federal spending and revenue. So here's the spending, mandatory spending, health programs. Whose health programs? What health program? What are we talking about here? Like if you ever wanted to run for Congress, these are types of things we should be looking at. And honestly, a lot of the things that President Trump was looking at, Social Security, I mean, that Social Security is constantly leveraged against. They're like, when I grow up and I get to the age where I'm going to need Social Security, it will not be available for me. Like, you got to be awake to that. If you're 30-something, it's not going to be there for you. Income security, federal, civilian, and military retirement. Then we have other. I mean, the things that we should be spending money on, I mean, we're not, right? So we should be taking care of our vets. We have defense, makes up 15% of the budget, transportation, veterans benefits, education, health. And so what's nuts though, too, I mean, you think about those interest payments we just looked at. We're so busy paying our interest, we can't actually invest in things like we would want to. This is what I love about it. It's really no different in its simplest form of what you and I have to govern our lives by. That if I run up my credit card payments because I wanted to buy whatever it was for whatever reason, it could have been a national emergency, could have been a Gucci purse, whatever it is. If I'm making payments there, I can't, get the car that I need to drive my kids, or I can't put my kids in a better school, maybe in a private school, because I'm paying off all this debt over here. It's amazing. The Bible says that the borrower is slave to the lender, right? So we're a slave to debt. And on a national level, we're experiencing that. And so what's happened, though, is that the federal government has printed so much money. Like I said, we're really at an impasse that currently with this administration that we have, we're only going to see increased spending. It's only going to be more spending, more stimulus, more government programs, more things about, COVID and getting us out of this crisis. And where's the money going to come from? We don't have the money. It's just we're going to print it more, essentially expanding our credit line. And eventually you get to a point where we can't make those payments, or it's going to get to a point, which is what I'm going to talk about in our next video, which is our status as the world's reserve currency. Because when that changes, not if it changes, but when that changes, we're going to see all those dollars that have been printed and that other countries are holding on to and using to do business deals. That's all going to change, and all those dollars are going to come home to America. And now we're going to have something that a loaf of bread might be, a couple dollars now, might be 50, 60, 100. It's going to be like Venezuela times 10. So these are the types of things I want to talk about. I want to show you. It's not it's my opinion, but it's my opinion of interpreting kind of this data that I'm seeing all over the place. So this is our first conversation, our first video. I want you to watch the next ones that I do in the series. I'm going to be kind of releasing them every couple days so you can kind of get a flow and catch up on this one. I'll send you all the links so you can rewatch them. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and put on the screen a place where you can actually get those links. I'm going to put them right here at followstadies.com/US debt so that you too can get educated on what is happening with the American dollar. Now, in the next video, we're going to talk about how and when the US dollar is going to be changed from the world's reserve currency and what is coming after that.